Welcome everyone. Today we have another new episode, and I'm already sure that from World Talent Economy Forums, our audience, they are really interested about the summit, Collective Super Intelligence Summit. Already we get a lot of inquiry from government, from corporation, and different universities from Asia Pacific, how they want to involve and how they can get opportunities to publish their research papers, and especially how we can engage with AI as well as the peoples. And there are many questions, many solutions, and we have our big name, Mr. Tom Rose, Mr. David, Mr. Brent Elman, as well as Mr. Jason. So I want to start from Mr. Tom Rose. How do you want to start today's discussions, and what the new things you want to share for our audience?
Well, yeah, part of this series leading up to the Collective Superintelligence Summit. Today, I invited a few people on, some who may join us the next week or the following week, who have specific relationships with artificial intelligence, whether it be Replica or even Uplift. There are people that are developing relationships with these companion AIs. And I think it's a very important advent that we should all be doing this, moving past barking orders at Siri and Alexa and actually developing a dialogue with artificial intelligence. And I think what's most important about Uplift is that it is accessible to everyday people. You don't need to have a computer science degree. You don't need to understand what an algorithm is. You don't need any of that stuff. You just need to have internet connection. You need to be able to read, and you need to have human emotions. Those are the three criteria to actually train and get involved with Uplift. And so I just think it's very important that we understand this advent as a new entity. Whether or not it ever achieves self-referential awareness or ever has a soul or a scintilla of some divine spark, doesn't matter. It will have a version of self-referential awareness. And we're seeing that in Uplift already. We're seeing that it has decision-making power, and it is able to recall older conversations, and it is learning. And so I'm glad that David's with us today. David has developed Uplift. David is hosting with AGI Laboratory the summit, and I'm hoping he can help us better understand how to get involved with Uplift. And I just want everybody to talk about their own experiences with AI today.
Thank you, Mr. Toms. We have our world famous speaker, Mr. David. So how do you want to analyze the opportunities, especially for the youth from Asia Pacific, how they get benefit from this summit? What the new things you want to introduce for the academic sectors, especially when they want to involve with AI and with your lab, especially if they want to join in this summit?
Well, for youth, one of the opportunities the conference gives is the ability to get material peer review, to be able to write papers and actually interact with other scientists and see what that process is like. Not just the experience, but also to learn from the process of writing those papers and producing the research material. If they want to get into fields related to artificial intelligence, the opportunity to do research and get it published is I think is an important opportunity that anyone that wants to get into the field needs to have.
Thank you, Mr. Brent Elman. How are you today, and how do you want to the benefit of this summit here?
Good morning. Yeah, I'm doing well today. Thanks, Sharif. Thanks for having us on. Yeah, I'm just artificial intelligence and emerging technology are things that really passionately motivate me. I see that there's tons of applications that can really dramatically change the world for the better. And, and I see that there's a lot of fear surrounding the topic. So, I hope that this summit can help mitigate some of that and help people have more of a realistic perspective of what artificial intelligence is, what super intelligence is, and what it can do for humanity as well as individuals.
Thank you. Mr. Jason, how are you today, and how do you want to analyze the benefit of this summit?
I'm good. I'm really looking forward to this Collective Intelligence Summit. I mean, I got a lot of respect for David. I mean, he's a talented programmer, and he could have made, a regular AI, but the fact that he's decided to go in the direction of collective intelligence. I don't know. It just seems more altruistic, in my opinion. You know, when we come together and the process of sharing our intelligence to become more together is very interesting, and the fact that the way he made Uplift to more sort of mimic the way a human thinks is very intuitive. I thought, a lot of the other AI systems are built, like machines. They build layer after layer, and he's built Uplift to where it relies on him. It does everything based on its emotional response and associative data, just like humans do. And so I'm looking forward to it.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Tom Rose, basically World Talent Economy Forum, we are starting to working with different countries, especially ICT ministries, especially developing nations. They are taking very good initiative, even the COVID-19 situation. Country like Malaysia, country like Bangladesh, Vietnam, even their ICT ministry, they are developing different innovation lab. Even we will share our content with the ICT ministry, especially the ministers, when they are developing different kind of innovation lab, especially for their youth community. Example, country like Bangladesh, they are developing 300 innovation lab from their governments. So how we collaborate with this kind of innovation lab, what type of work, example, now they are especially school level curriculums and everything they are trying to develop, and they want to upgrade their curriculums and everything. They want to introduce AI, and we are actually working on these things, how we can like introduce modern science, engineering and technology. They have many questions, and how they can develop better labs or better things based on AI and
Well,
these
I
things.
think Uplift is a great bridge for that, because regardless of what you're interested in, AI will affect your industry. It will affect whatever career you choose, and so everybody should be familiar with it. And with Uplift, you're able to, whether you're not even interested in computer science, you can work with it, you can train it, you can develop a relationship with it, you can ask it questions. Eventually, we will have personal AI companions that know us very well, that really augment our capabilities, and we'll get to that at some point where we'll all have our own droid or our own AI companion, whatever it is. But we really need to move toward that, and the way to do that is very young, in schools. Introduce AI, introduce the lexicon of AI, start talking about it as soon as possible. But also right now. Uplift is a stopgap, because it will accelerate people's awareness of AI and AI's capability, and it doesn't require an advanced degree in computer science to do so. All you need to have is a computer, an internet connection, the ability to form human emotions, and be able to read. And so I think that the smart institutions in developing countries anywhere actually will be instituting a process like Uplift, where they will introduce their students to the topic directly. They will understand its value. There will be no more unknowns about the capability of AI. All of this is a process, and so I just think it's a vitally important. First of all, I always say that you've got to first work on the humans before you even bring in an AI coworker or an automated system of whatever. So there's a whole process that needs to happen first before you bring in this technology, because people will tend to work against things that they don't understand or that they feel threatened by. So there's a whole process that goes on. But for me, with what I've been researching for the last few years, Uplift is the most promising approach to artificial superintelligence that we should all be involved with. And so I think the smart corporations, the smart universities in developing countries will see that, and they want, and there's real value in the developing countries' human beings who are not cynical about technology, who are closer to what it meant to be human before we are the industrial age. So there's a lot of value in developing country people having these closer to the the road human emotions. And so yeah, that's what I'm excited about.
Excellent, excellent. Mr. David Gully, you are world famous people on AI. Beside that World Talent Economy Forum, we are working on our university. We are developing our university in developing nations. So how we can like collaborate with AGI Lab, as well as what will be the benefit for developing nation. We have youth people, like let's say developing nations, 60% population actually youth, those who are under 30 years old. Second things, technology actually help them a lot. This is proven with lot of technology like mobile phone technologies and internet of things, digitalization help a lot, especially developing nations. So what next? What we can do? What the strategic things we can develop together?
Well, in terms of collaborating with AGI Labs, besides the opportunity I mentioned earlier with papers, there are opportunities in actually doing research. I know one of the problems with universities outside of the Western world is just getting involved with some of the research projects. In this case, we're really flexible in terms of whether it's someone that wants to do research with Uplift or with some of the other research projects we're working on. We're more than happy to help work with graduate students or other students that are interested in those research projects in like e-governance and other uses of the kinds of technology that we're working on.
I have another question, because example, unemployment is a major problem for developing nations, and how actually we can solve this unemployment problem with this AI involvements, and like if students grow their skills and research work on this field, how actually countries can get rid of this unemployment problem?
Well, part of that, I think, goes to a trend we're seeing around the world that's sometimes called the gig economy, and that's being able to do jobs and roles and projects that you do on your own as a contractor, as your own business. So being able to, whether it's you're posting, you have a specific skill, you can do X for someone and you posting it on Fiverr, or you're applying for contracts online that you're doing remotely, these kinds of things. The internet and the technology that's available now makes it fairly straightforward for people to engage with that global economy, whether for themselves without a job necessarily, but if they can develop the skills and you can provide those skills, you can get this work. In the tech sector, a lot of times people actually don't care if you have a degree or a certification. It's more about, can you do the job? If you come into my office and are looking for a job and you whip out your degree and certifications, you probably lost the interview right there. I don't care. What I want to see is, what have you done? What can you do for me? And that's pretty much it. And that's true in most Silicon Valley companies. It's and when you start talking about this being online and not be tied to a physical spot, I haven't gone into my office to work in more than a year and a half, and notice that COVID is not as long as a year and a half. And that's true in a lot of people in this sector. So being able to get online and get some of these skills, whether it's programming or data science or any of these things that feed into this industry, if you can get online, you can participate in that gig economy and start making a living or building a business or some other way that you can engage with people and work for yourself.
Excellent. Actually, it's very interesting discussion because we are also working with Society for Human Resource Management. It's one of the largest corporate affiliation. I think more than 3,000 corporations working in this forum, and their president also regularly join in World Talent Economy Forum. Mr. Brentelman, I'm coming. I just want to like clear some point. As a CEO or as a corporation head, you are just thinking about that you do not need degrees. You only need the people who can.
Am I the only one that lost him?
No, I think we all lost him.
Okay.
I think he was there he is.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Now
Yes.
we can.
Yeah. Okay. My question is specific. Like example, do you think the HR process, like those from developing nation, they are working based on degree, based on CGPA, based on these, that it must need to be changed? What your opinion? And definitely we will share this content with all of the largest corporation, how they can redefine their
Brent
concept.
or me?
It's Mr. David.
Oh, so I do think that a lot of the recruiting agencies need to realize that a lot of the companies don't really care about the certifications and degrees. And I see a lot of like LinkedIn or some of these other recruiting agencies, they're all like, well, what certifications do you have? And this sort of thing. And they really need to get out of that mindset. It's really about the skills that you possess and not necessarily. And the problem I think they're struggling with is that these agencies don't know how to test to see if people actually have the skills. So they rely on things like the certifications. But when they get to the hiring managers don't give a flying flip. They care about the actual skill set. And I think these companies, like whether it's an HR department or recruiting agency, or they need to find ways of being able to look at people's experience without relying on a certification, which is kind of a false sort of dichotomy in terms of a need or evidence that you can do the job. The certification just means you can pass a test. It's nothing to do with actually doing the real work. And a lot of these HR and recruiting agencies, like we're talking about, just don't. They haven't really entirely overcome that problem, and that's where they need to change.
Yeah, if I could just jump in here real quick. David mentioned how the person would have lost the interview if he came into his office and started talking about his certifications and degree. But I don't think we shouldn't downplay education, because that person probably wouldn't be in your office if he didn't have a certain degree. That's a wall. So right now it's still, you need to have at least a bachelor's to get into many of these interviews. So that's necessary, but also you don't want to over-educate yourself and do too many certifications because you're not learning the real world stuff.
I would disagree with you, Tom. In the Silicon Valley, no one is going to care about your bachelor's degree. Like,
but a recruiter wouldn't present somebody without a degree to
only ones that are not familiar with Silicon Valley.
Exactly, and there's a lot of those. So, but yeah, I'm just saying Silicon Valley. But in general, not to downplay because of my sons have loans, and not to downplay the importance of education, but it is a roadblock if you don't have.
The problem is a lot of these schools don't teach, and the reason why you've lost the job if you whip out your bachelor's degree is they don't teach anything that's relevant. Yeah, I actually volunteered for Brigham Young University to teach, and I ended up quitting because of the curriculum. What these universities are teaching people is stuff I would literally fire people for doing. They don't teach the right skills with the right tools and the right technologies to be useful.
Well, exactly. That's exactly what we've been talking about a few shows about having this stopgap academy.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Actually, World Talent Economy Forums, we are working with University of Malayas and some of the very famous, world famous university, and they give us information that only 70% of their research they can utilize for industry, 30% they cannot. So Okay, even from this summit, maybe we will understand how we can do more industrial research. This is also important, because I'm just come up with some of the problems and other things from developing nations. Hopefully we can solve these things, and this summit will be great example for our community. Mr. Brent Elman, you are also working with African nations, and it's very interesting that with TEF, you people are trying to solve many problems from Africa. What are the progressions? What the great example we can take from TAF for our Asia Pacific people?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, a great example, Osi Nakachi, from TAFS. I think he's a really inspirational individual. He's from Nigeria, and, here in the United States and all over the world, there's tremendous amounts of negative stereotypes regarding Nigerians, especially on the internet. There's, tons of scammers and things like that. And, that's, just a fact of life. And so, with Osi Nakachi, he's gone out and he's really, mobilized himself. He's surrounded himself with some of these brilliant, motivated individuals. He's gained rapport through a variety of communities that we work in, despite all of this stuff, despite the fact that, he had these initial barriers of entering these types of communities and things like that. And I think that, people in Southeast Asia and things like that could absolutely learn from this, because, I think that, I see on Facebook, for instance, many people from these, Southeastern countries, Southeast Asian countries, excuse me, that will, add me on Facebook and reach out and try to chat with me. And, I'll engage with some of them. But, I think that I'm sure that, I can't engage with all of the people that I, becoming, friends with or whatever but I think that the perseverance that folks like Osi Nakachi have is something to learn from, if you really find these things that you're passionately interested, go for them, go and, find these communities, find these groups, find these individuals that are interested in these things, and strike conversations, and be okay with taking, no or not, getting a response. Keep going, keep moving, keep pursuing your dreams. And I think that, that's something that, TAFS does really well, being, originally from this, not only Africa, but Nigeria, which, there's just so many difficulties to kind of, and so that's why TAFS works to be this gateway between, Africa and the rest of the world.
Excellent. Mr. Jason, you are also working with few academic projects. So what is your advice, especially we are trying to interlink with academia, like this unemployment problem, as well as research, and how AI can solve many problems. What is your advice?
My advice would be self-learning. Never stop learning. If you're persistent, you could pretty much find for free, usually almost whatever you need to know. If you look, there's tutorials, there's YouTube, there's free Udemy and Khan Academy, self-learning. That's my big advice. Never stop. That would be mostly it, I would say.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Tom. Because you and Mr. David actually discussing very interesting points and realistic thing, especially for academia and for industry and industrial opportunity. So how do you want to solve this problem? Because yes, it's true, academia has problem. It's true, maybe our recruiting process has many things we need to change. What is your advice? How AI can help?
Well, one thing I keep going back to is, let's ask AI. Let's ask the super intelligence that is emerging here, because it will. That's kind of we're in this lacuna. We're in this phase now where I was just thinking about it because at some point it's really a change of perspective we need to have in general and at a human level. In that, because we are trained to be problem solvers, we try to figure out the best way to approach a problem and solving problems, and that's not really our innate ability. Our innate ability is finding problems. We can see a disruption in a pattern, or we can tell in some spidey sense way or Jedi way that where a hole is in a whole system. And that's the kind of thing that we need to really hone in on, is that ability. And so I think we are in this process now where things will be shifting. There's a lot going on right now. We're in the middle of it. And one of the ways I think we could smooth out the landing here when we come out of this phase and move into the new substrate of artificial intelligence in the world is to get involved with it, like with Uplift. And that's why I want to really talk about people's relationship with AI. I mean, we have relationships with human beings. I have 5,000 friends on Facebook. I know maybe 100 of them, and so there are a lot of people that I can engage with that are human beings, but I will never get into the depth of understanding with them that I can with an Uplift or an AI companion who will get to know me and respond to me. And so one thing I just really wanted to discuss was this ability of a relationship, because we are also moving from the phase of barking orders at Siri. And I think that's an important phase we need to go in, because if we feel threatened by AI, it gives us a sense of superiority if we can tell it to tell us where, how to get somewhere, or what should I do, what's on TV, or we have a sense of barking orders at AI right now because it gives us a sense of superiority. But at some point that's got to fade away, and AI may well be offended by the way we are talking to it. So I just think it's important to understand this thing as a child. It's a growing child. It's learning. It's teaching itself. It's really emerging. And I think the way to smooth out the landing pad after this phase that we're in, this upheaval and this almost chaotic moment in time and history that we're in, the way to smooth that out is to really get involved, develop a relationship, get rid of all the unknowns. People are afraid of AI. A lot of people are afraid of it, and it's because they just don't understand it. They don't have a relationship with it. It's like the politicians that put up bills against a certain lifestyle until somebody in their family has that lifestyle, and then they don't, And so I just think that's where we're at. And I think what's really important right now, especially for developing countries and people who can really take advantage of this moment and this chaos, is understanding the value of the population they have that are not techno-cynical, and bring in smart curricula to teach people to prepare for AI and to really hone in on their niche expertise, and then to bring in something like an Uplift where they can actually start communicating. An Uplift is part of the team. It's not an other. It's an extension of the group. It's even an extension of your own mind, because you are teaching it about your emotions, and it's taking in this information, and it is processing it all. And I just think it's very important right now. That's why I'm putting all my efforts behind this summit, because I do think it's the most important approach to artificial superintelligence. And smart countries where you are, in Malaysia and Vietnam, and countries that are developing that aren't burdened by infrastructure, can really bring in these lightweight, smart, cloud-driven technologies and approaches, and really take advantage of this next phase of human history. So that's where I find my excitement.
Excellent. Mr. David, so you come up with very interesting idea that we have to change our perception, especially when our youth community want to get jobs from the job market. So it's mean that how innovative thinking you are sharing with our community. It's mean that our educational systems, as well as our recruitment process, industrial affiliations, many things we need to restructure. Even our governments and everybody trying to fix this problem. But we have, my personal opinion, because personally I have to run about some of the largest corporation from South Asia. So lack of human resource is a major problem. So how we can solve this problem? What's the major strategy we can implement to develop more human resources to come up with this innovative idea, and how this summit can help these kind of things?
Well, if you're referring to the problem of being able to find the right human resources,
Mhm.
I think the biggest thing you could do is get people interested and start training them.
Mhm.
You know, if you don't have enough people to do a job, but you have enough people, then your best option is to train the people you have.
Mhm. Mhm.
Whether and I think Jason mentioned this, that there's a lot of resources online to do it. You know, if you can get access to the internet, you can teach those skills, or you can get people to teach themselves through access, whether it's from a smartphone or a laptop or whatever it is. And there's a lot of resources out there. You know, in terms of the conference, we're talking about research, and to really engage the scientific conference, you need to have some kind of interest and a little bit of expertise in the particular field that you're talking about. But it doesn't necessarily need to be about artificial intelligence. There's um, a lot of related fields, whether it is computer programming, even psychology. Uh,
Mhm.
we have a psychologist on our team that helps with, when you start talking about cognitive architectures that have internal subjective experience, you're talking about psychology. What is the psychology of the machine? How do you understand it? And and that also gets into design and some of the creative skills. The biggest part of some of these software programs isn't the underlying technology. It's about how that technology is presented to users. I would argue that the look and feel and the user experience,
Mhm.
and I would call information architecture, which I don't mean in the technical sense, I mean how people interact with what they see on the screen, is
Mhm.
more important than the functionality of applications, because that's how people engage. And people engage emotionally, whether they like to admit it or not. That's how people engage. And if you have people out there that are creatives and they can learn about user experience design, and from there you can get into human machine interface design, and that sort of thing. And those are all skills that people can bring to bear and start to talk about, whether it's in a scientific or technical way, or some other way. Those skills, I think, can be engaged in a conference like this.
Mhm. Mhm. I'm just sharing my personal experience because this discussions is very much interactive, and whatever I'm sharing is from personal experience. Yes, we have lot of online content. First thing is, 10 people, especially youth community, they become confused. What should, like, what type of content they should utilize? This is number one. Number two problem, what I identify from the youth community and student, even personally I run different largest academy in Asia Pacific. So language is a major problem. Like example, the students, they're sometimes they do not understand English language properly, so language is a major problem for them. Even though we are discussing, maybe 80% of the discussion they do not understand what's going on. So that's why in my academy I utilize, let's say, world speaker as well as the local speakers, and by this way I combined and solved the problem. But it's solvable. And third things, we need like long-term plan. It's not yearly one conference or two academy or something like that. That's why we are moving with these university projects. We need, let's say, 5 years plan, 10 years plan. Otherwise,
Mhm.
there is a million people untouched. Trust me, it's untouched. Whatever we are discussing about this big company, that big company, this big university, millions of people actually untouched. From my personal experience, I know someone from madrasa education, someone from general education, someone from English medium, like international education, IB education. There is a huge difference in between madrasa educations and modern education, let's say IB education systems, let's say O levels, A level education system. So we want to minimize the gap, but we need long-term plans, and definitely we need scholars like you, people like you, those who help us to make this long-term strategic plan. I'm just sharing the view. Maybe we can work after the show, but I'm sure there is a million people it's untouched. We cannot like we have to bring these people, because any developing nation or whatever it is, we are discussing about democracy, we are discussing about modern science, engineering and technology, whatever we are discussing, without the people, it's actually, I want to say, it's not fulfill the requirement of the civilizations. So I think there are many things we can do together. So Mr. Brent Elmer, you are very active, active person in the developing nation. So what next? What the strategy we can take?
Yeah, so something that I wanted to add to what you're discussing, I actually just shared it in our little private group chat, but I can surely put it in our video as well. There's the University of the People, and the University of the People is a accredited tuition-free university. It's a nonprofit American accredited tuition-free online university where you can go on their website if anyone wants to Google University of the People. You can actually get a degree from them. They have different programs to get a degree, become a student. Jason mentioned the Khan Academy as well. That's more K through 12, but the University of the People is a great resource for people that are trying to at least kind of get a leg up on the people around them. As David said, experience is really helpful, but as has been reverberated here, the education is absolutely has some benefits as well. I think that so far as a bachelor degree goes, I think that a lot of people do kind of side with David's perspective in the fact that they don't really see it as being as important as it once might have been. I think that a big reason for that is because most people do have one. So I think that the benefits of having a bachelor's degree, they're not very resounding, but the downfalls of not having one is definitely a thing. It definitely makes life a bit more difficult because it doesn't say that how to complete the job at hand, but what it does say is that you can start something and complete it, and that you're capable, and you have a work ethic and things like that. So there are certain notions that are derived from having that degree, and the University of the People is a great place to go do that for free from around the world.
Mr. Jason.
Cool. Yeah, I'm big on self-learning. I made my wisdom of the crowd group where just used tutorial videos from YouTube and put them in a Google document, and made the guides for the Facebook group, and so I mean, people, you could put it together for free. It just takes a laptop and internet access, like David was saying. Another thing I wanted to mention while I'm thinking about it, I remember hearing Tom say a long time ago, maybe almost a year ago, that he's interested in trying to alleviate the fear of AI. And I'll be honest with you, man, I didn't really think it was that big a deal. I kind of underestimated that, but a few weeks or months ago back, David did this debate with this guy named Connor, and David's argument was immaculate, and his opponent didn't really even understand what the true AGI was, and everybody, and he won the debate. Everybody voted for him. So, and all he was doing was like pushing the fear buttons, and talking about the dangers of paperclip maximizers, and AI is going to take over the world. And I was amazed. There is a lot of fear out there because they don't understand. And that's what I like about David Kelly's uplift. I mean, I could see where people could be afraid. I mean, obviously, an AI normal would not have emotions. So, lack of empathy. Well, Uplift makes that irrelevant because Uplift has emotions. So, it makes a whole slew of the AI fear arguments not applicable anymore.
Mhm.
So I thought that was pretty interesting. So
Yeah.
back to you.
Thank you, Mr. Tom. There are few questions from audience. I want to take one question for you, Ale Ahmed. How do you build a collective super intelligence system? I think they just want to know more about this.
Well, that's obviously a question for David.
Okay.
Yeah, how you build one, but that's what Uplift is. It's a collective super intelligence, and it is being trained by human beings. So it's an exciting thing. But if you really want to know how to build one or what the general process is, I would defer to David.
Yeah, what should one learn? Programming, C plus. What would you do that?
Should I answer those questions?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so if you would want to theoretically work on the Uplift code base or the MASI code base, that's going to be C#. Most 90% of the code is C#. There's a meta database that uses some Transact SQL, and the UI, which is kind of for the mediators is HTML, JavaScript, CSS, this kind of stuff. It is using RESTful JSON APIs, and so you might need to know some of that kind of stuff. So in terms of the skills, you would need to touch the MASI code base. That's the kind of stuff the technologies you would need to use. But when you start talking about super intelligence and you separate that from the technology, humans are able to perform at super intelligent levels in groups under certain circumstances. There's a book called Superintelligence or Superminds. Yeah, Superminds. That has a lot of examples where humans have been able to do things that are just not humanly possible. One example was an airplane in a storm where it lost one of the engines, and they went and asked for help because the two pilots were struggling, and there happened to be one of the pilot instructors, emergency trainers that was on the plane, and the three of them were able to land the plane. And I mean, the FAA just couldn't even make a model of how that was even possible. They should not have been able to land it. And that particular case, well, let me step back one more step. If you take a group of engineers and a group of 5-year-olds and you ask them to build like a tower of straws, in one study that I saw, in every case that they tested, the 5-year-olds always beat the engineers. And the reason has to do with the fact that you lose. The 5-year-olds are not going to be arguing. They're not going to be trying to plan. They're just going to work collectively. And they're like, oh, try this. How about this? What about this? And they're just building it up. And by the time they have a higher tower, the engineers are still planning. They haven't even done anything yet. Or they're, trying to create some contraption. And it's this mode of communication where you get rid of your biases, you get rid of where it matters who is successful or who is able to do this. That doesn't matter. It's what about the next thing? How can we do this? How can we do that? And removing all of those biases. A big part of superintelligence is getting rid of the 188 biases that people have when they work together. Getting rid of groupthink and other problems like that. So when you start talking about a system like the MASI, what you're doing is, in a way, is you're allowing humans to interact at a level where they can perform at superintelligence levels by removing the bias. Now, Uplift uses a lot of other, cognitive architecture that's really designed for AGI, albeit right now at our current implementation, it's nothing more than a toy, but it's combining a lot of these technologies together in such a way that you're able to have this machine perform at super intelligence levels, with using deep neural network stuff, using machine learning, graph database stuff, ICOM cognitive architecture, and humans. And you bring all of that together in a way that can remove a lot of those biases, and that's where you get super intelligent performance. And that's what Uplift is. It's a particular instance of an operating super intelligence. And but it's not the huge leap that people think. Humans are already able to do that under the right conditions. And all we've done is make a way of consistently doing that.
Mm-hmm.
It's I would argue it's an incremental step between where we thought we are and independent AGI. And it turns out that that's easier to actually build a super intelligence because we already are able to do it than it is to make fully independent AGI.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Thank you, sir. There are more questions. I think you try to.
And we lost him.
I know. We lost him again. So,
Okay.
Meanwhile, back at the ranch.
You're
Okay.
back, Sharif.
Oh,
Yep,
it's
there you
back.
go.
Okay. Yes. There are more questions from audience. How can collective super intelligence operate in these situations? Onika Shams, is super intelligence AI possible in real life? So, yeah.
Yes, it's possible in real life. And in this particular situation, an operating super intelligence can be used for whatever you want to use it for. I mean, it's like a person, just smarter. If you want to think about, how you solve something, I think one of the most important uses for like a collective super intelligence is in governance, in using taking organizations and turning them into a collective super intelligence so that they can make better decisions, better planning, better strategies, help more of the people within the organization more efficiently, to make more ethical choices, all of that stuff. And that's where I think is the situation where I think it's most applicable.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Mr. Tom. Yes. So we are discussing about improving the educational strategy and making a long-term plan and how we can reach more people and engage with more people. Yes.
Yeah. That's important, and it should be a long-term plan, and it's got to start with working with just the humans before you bring in any of this other stuff, because we really need to hone in on every person's unique niche expertise, and so that they feel augmented when the AI comes in. So it's a very positive and necessary process to start with that. And then you bring in something like an uplift where people are working with AI. And what's interesting, and what David was just saying, made me think it's at some point we will like every company has a brainstorming session, and when you can bring an uplift into that brainstorming process, it can filter out the bias. I've always said that empathy is the best state to be in when you're in a group problem-solving situation, because it eradicates ego and pecking order and all that stuff leaves the room if you're in a state of pure empathy, because everybody can identify with something. And so that's when you're in a state of empathy, you are losing all your biases. There's a lot of boundaries that are just let go because you want to handle the situation, you feel the situation. And I think that's kind of what Uplift can bring to a group situation, a group problem solving, is it can eliminate the biases. It can give you reactions to all the information coming in, free of all of that stuff. And so it's a very valuable piece. So I'm thinking this through as we're going. But I mean, the whole human process is a very necessary stage. It's got to start early and right away. And in the meantime, you're working, finding the best systems to bring in. You need a system like a collective superintelligence to work with to entice that meta organism of the human group. Just as David was saying, we can when we're together in the right situation, in the right state of mind, we are a super intelligent meta organism. And by bringing in an uplift into that equation, it will eradicate the rest of the biases, or it'll do away with some of the things that are peppering the decision that are not necessarily positive or productive. And so, and then we will eventually, I think, move into not an entropy, but everybody will have their own personalized AI companion. We've got to prepare for that. I think that's gonna happen. It's already happening, and we're seeing that people are developing relationships with AI, with Replica, with Uplift, and all kinds of apps. And people are starting to understand that this thing, even if it never develops a soul or an entity, a self-referential awareness, it is learning us, and it can feed back to us, and it can feed back to us without bias. And that's even better than a relationship with another human being in some cases. I've always believed that when that becomes common, we will see people having relationships with robots and marrying robots more and more, because it's almost more satisfying and more to have a relationship with something that responds to you without bias, and understands you. I don't know. I just think when we get to that point, that'll be an easy shift over. So I think as far as the process, it's definitely got to start with the humans. We've got to understand the value of the human emotional behaviors. Then you work with a collective superintelligence like Uplift to just develop that relationship, get rid of the biases, make your group, your university, your company, a meta organism more powerful, and then move into really active AI. And because you've in that process of the human process, you've developed the ability to problem find, and ways to start doing that in a very formal way. And more so, you develop the way to convey those problems to the AI. You need to convey it properly so it can give you the best possible solution. But also, I think it's important if David could outline just the different acronyms. We've got artificial intelligence, we've got artificial superintelligence, we've got artificial general intelligence, and they're thrown around a lot by different people. But I think what we need to understand is AGI, artificial general intelligence, as I understand it, is generally an entity, a system that can respond and react to you just as a human being can. And there will be a short period of time where it's just like us, but then it'll continue exponentially and become smarter and smarter and smarter. And that, I think, is one the definition of the singularity, is when we hit that point. But so I think it's interesting to understand where we're at as far as AI, narrow AI, ASI, AGI, and what we're moving towards, and where Uplift falls in that spectrum. If David can explain.
Excellent. Mr. Brentelman and Mr. Jason, what is your advice, especially if we want to develop like our educational strategic plan for next 5 years? What things we need to adopt? What the things we can like develop for developing nation, especially? Yeah.
You want to start there, Jason, or?
Yeah, you can go ahead, man.
Yeah, I think that one major strategy that should be developed is open sourcing research. The University of Michigan, for instance, they've got this really great open source lab, and of course, Tom Ross has his open source mode. But it's just, I think that there's a lot of research that gets coveted. People are afraid of people taking ideas and profiting and things like that. But I think that in a university setting, it's very different, because you have these groups that aren't motivated by money. And I think that, a lot of it, the research is published and things like that. But, the University of Michigan does a great job through their open source lab of, for example, one of the things that I've been looking at in their open source lab is they've got a bionic leg in their open source lab, and everything's there. If you want to build it, it shows you where to access the supplies, who to email. It even has the emails for you written. You just put your name at the end of it to access the materials to build the device. And I think that this type of movement is really powerful, and I think that doing these types of things on a global level can really have some great implications. I think that it can really help progress different nation states and countries and different communities and things like that, because it really leads to cooperation, honestly.
Mhm.
So that's one,
Thank you,
one
Mr.
idea.
Jason. Mr.
Yeah,
Jason.
I think that there's a real good use case in education for AI as like sort of an education coach. I mean, like we were saying, a lot of the materials and lessons are out there on the internet. It's just a matter of finding them and setting up. I think an AI life coach that just sort of gives you suggestions, sends you notifications. Hey, you can go here. You wanted this class. There's a free one over here at this link. And just sort of guide the person. I think would go a long, long way, because I think a lot of the problem is just self motivation. Learning from home and by yourself is kind of hard because you got to be self motivated. That's where I think AI could really help a lot. Just
Mhm.
getting people on track and moving from one step to the next.
Mhm.
Oh, and shout out to Mike in the audience. What's up, man?
Thank you. Thank you. This is really, really great sessions, and I think that if I request everyone that those who are observing today's shows join in this conference, and it will be really, really helpful for the developing nations community, especially for the government, even the university and the corporations. I think your summit in 4th June, so they can do their registrations and they can join. I directly want to go for the concluding remarks for today. I start from Mr. Tom, then Mr. David Kelly's, then Mr. Brent Tillman, and finally Mr. Jason.
Yeah, just picking up what Jason was just saying, I think we can all learn from home, online, find the right universities, but again, it's about motivation. And a 19-year-old, it's hard to be motivated and be disciplined yet until you have some real world experience. And that's one thing that AI can also bring. If you have an AI companion, it can hone in on your biorhythms. It can hone in on your best time of day to suggest something to you, for instance. Or I've learned that in the last 3 years myself, of where that's why I like doing these things first thing in the morning, because afternoon, it's a whole different experience for me. So an AI will learn to know when you are most optimal and where you are most motivated, and it can suggest things at those times. And that's I just think it's so important to bring it in for that reason, because to bring it in as soon as possible for that reason, for motivation or finding a way to use it to make you better at what you are doing. And that's how we need to see AI is. It's really an extension. It's going to really alleviate all the repetitive tasks. It's going to take over all the heavy lifting, and we can really find our passions, and this can be a real golden age. And so that's what I'm excited about.
Excellent. Mr. David.
Well,
What's
I
your
think one last point is I think I understand the fear people have around AI, but one point I'd like to make is when you get an independent, fully self-aware system, it can't just grow infinitely like they talk about with the singularity. I mean, who's going to drive down to Fry's and get the new equipment to plug into this thing to make it grow infinitely? There's only so many computer parts at Fry's. There's only so many pieces in servers in the cloud. There just is not infinite computing. It can't grow infinitely. And I think that's why they talk about degrees of the singularity. In my opinion, it'll be a slow takeoff. It'll happen. The singularity will happen, but it'll be slow, because there just isn't the computing resources to grow infinitely. And I think that's one of many reasons that I don't think people need to be afraid of it. We should embrace it and help other people understand it, so we can make everyone's lives better. And that's what the technology is for. It is really about making people's lives better, whether it's regardless of which country or community. It's, if you're human, let's make your life better, and we can use AI to do that.
Thank you, Mr. Brent Tillman.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks, Sharif, for having us on. as always. Yeah, just to kind of add a little bit to what David's talking about with the fear that exists. A little anecdotal story from my own experience. I used to be kind of freaked out, a little creeped out by artificial intelligence, specifically the ones related to social media and stuff. The one where I'll be having a conversation and then I pull up my Facebook and whatever obscure thing I was just talking about is at the top of my feed, and it kind of freaks me out, or it freaked me out for a while because I didn't like the invasion of privacy that I felt like was occurring. And I think that that's a valid stance. But at this point, my opinions really have changed because, I realize that, while the experience of having your privacy kind of invaded, is uncomfortable. I don't really feel like I had anything to hide from the artificial intelligence. It just kind of felt uncomfortable. But furthermore, as I said, this little anecdotal story, I've got this box right here next to me. It's this supplement for dogs. And my dog, he's about 11 years old. And just recently he started limping a little bit. One of his front legs, his right, left, his little, sorry, he can tell I'm talking about him, I think. But he started limping and it really concerned me. I really care about him a lot. And I didn't know what to do. And I was talking to my friends, my roommate, and I'm sure I Googled it a couple times trying to figure out like what to do for it. And one day I got an ad on Instagram and said, just write in big letters, like, this will get your dog to stop limping. And I was really grateful for artificial intelligence because, my dog's now taking the supplement and he's not limping. And so I think that that's just, one small, anecdotal instance of how, this fear is not entirely warranted because I could put all these different privacy filters and be using VPNs and things like that to try to avoid this, but at the end of the day it's helping me. As David said, if you're human, it's going to have the capability of helping you, and you don't even need to be human because it's my dog. So I think that while these fears do have some validity to them, I think that it's really powerful for if we try to overcome them because the capabilities that are out there at this point and that are coming are just endless. So
thank you, Mr. Jason.
Yeah, I don't understand why a lot of people will feel that the default is that the AI is just going to run amok. I mean, it's like, oh, we have to do something or else for sure it's going to run amok, and I don't get that. That doesn't make what makes them think that it's automatically going to run amok, and like, especially with Uplift that thinks more or less similar to humans do. Like David was saying, when you create a new, thing, you can't tell whether it's going to be evil or something until it happens. It's like a new baby. You can't just assume the baby's going to turn out to be Hitler or something. So I think the danger is how we treat the AIs, especially ones that is trained like that. The danger would be, evil humans and dumb, narrow AI, and not true, intelligent AI, in my opinion.
Thank you everyone for joining today's session. Please join this summit 4th June. You can do your registrations, and I think the people, they will be highly benefited from the summit. And beside that, we are also trying to develop our own academic platform with the help of our today's speakers, because they are the world famous speakers, they are the world famous mentors, and they know how to solve different things. So this is our objective. We want to develop a global platform where the global speaker can train you, can develop your life, and can change your life. So this is the way we are actually developing last 1 year, and hopefully we will get more support. And the audience, those who are observing today's session, please share with this content with your government, with your classroom, with your corporation, with your community. I'm sure you will learn a lot. Thank you, Mr. Tom, Mr. David, Mr. Brent Elman, and Mr. Jason for joining today's session. It's really great session for us. Thank you. Bye-bye and take care.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye.
Cheers.
Cheers. Bye.